What's up, everybody? This is Jared coming back to you again on my channel, Keystone Carry. And tonight I'm going to talk to you about why I just had to tear my transmission out of my Jeep again. So over the last 6 months, you guys have seen that I have undergone a turbo diesel conversion in my 99 Jeep Cherokee. This has always been my dream. I've always wanted to do this conversion. So when I sold my 1981 Rabbit pickup, I used the money that I got from that transaction, and I decided that now is the time in my life where if I'm going to do this, I better just go do it. So I started researching, and if you watched my previous video, I ended up sticking with the Mercedes OM617 5-cylinder turbo diesel engine. And long story short, I began the swap. I purchased my swap kit and all of the components from Mercedes Diesel 4x4, and I went to work. Now the last 6 months has been, it's kind of an understatement to say it like this, but it has been a complete nightmare. I am exhausted from this swap. And the most frustrating aspect about this whole entire process is we had the Jeep running and capable of driving within 2 weekends. So think about that. Within just a couple days, we had this thing bolted in. I had all the other stuff fabricated that I needed to have fabricated, and I could have driven my Jeep. But I ran into constant issues with this swap kit, and every 5,000 miles, between every 3,000 and 5,000 miles, I'm tearing my transmission out. I'm going through pilot bushings, my throwout bearings, garbage every 5,000 miles. So I need to talk to you guys about this. Now I wanted to address the questions because I have literally gotten hundreds over the last 6 months. Everybody wants me to go into an extremely detailed breakdown of how I did this conversion. And I'm going to be 100% honest with you, I have all the footage. I have over 120 hours of footage from doing this swap. And the reason I've been holding off is because of the issues that I've been having with this kit from Mercedes Diesel 4x4. And at the end of the day, I'm not willing to put together a video that shows you how to catastrophically destroy your vehicle. Now, before I go any further, I want to lay down some ground rules. First off, I want to apologize because it's going to be super echoey in here in the shop, and there's bugs everywhere. You're going to hear crickets, there's going to be noise and all kinds of stuff. So it's not going to be perfect, but just bear with me. The second thing, my intentions with this video are not to just slander Mercedes Diesel 4x4. I want to make that abundantly clear. My only interest in doing this video is making sure you don't purchase this AX15 conversion kit and then think that it's going to be a turnkey swap. If after this video is done, you're still like, okay, cool, I'm gonna buy that kit, awesome. You just learned about Mercedes Diesel 4x4, go buy his kit. But there is another option on the market, and I'm gonna steer you guys towards this. Just know that there are components that Mercedes Diesel 4x4 makes that are legit. But I'm telling you, there is something wrong with my AX15 adapter plate, the crank adapter, or all of them together. I continually am running into issues, and it's always pointing back to the adapter plate kit. But I want to run down through the storyline a little bit of some of the issues I've experienced up until this point. And then I want to share some exciting news and show you why I have these components laid out across the table. So let's dive right into the storyline. Towards the end of 2018, I got that OM617 motor. I bought the conversion kit from Mercedes Diesel 4x4, and we went to work. We installed the kit, we followed all the instructions, we did everything to the T. And both myself and my business partner that helped me install the kit are mechanics. We are very mechanically inclined. We're not just some dudes that picked up wrenches and said, oh, let's go do this thing. So am I saying that I'm the best in the world? No. But I'm just throwing that out there that this is not resulting from user errors. These are instructions that we followed to the T. The first major issue I ran into right away was with the oil filter relocation kit. And this cost me thousands of dollars. Now I'm going to tell you this, the company ended up standing behind their product and their mistake and took care of me. It didn't cover everything, but they did try to make it right for me. And that's why initially I did not raise red flags to people about Mercedes Diesel 4x4. Their oil filter relocation kit consists of a block that covers off where the factory oil filter housing would go. You thread in some fittings, you run your own lines, and you have this little oil filter that you can mount wherever you want. We followed the instructions to the letter, and I locked up 2 motors. So I had 2 of these 5-cylinder turbo diesel motors that quite literally ground to a halt in about a minute. The first motor that we locked up was the nicest of the 2 motors, so we decided that rather than screwing around and trying to buy another used motor, we bought all of the components to fully rebuild this motor. When we had the block torn down, it became very obvious which direction the oil would flow through the block, through the filter, and the instructions on Mercedes Diesel 4x4 were 100% backwards. So we followed instructions to the T, locked up 2 motors, which cost me thousands of dollars, and that was just the start. After I got all of that sorted out, we fully rebuilt this motor. Now I've got a fresh OM617, slapped the whole thing back together, and I expect to have a nice running, driving Jeep Cherokee. Well, not so fast, because about 1,500 miles into it, my clutch starts making all kinds of crazy noises. I came to find that with this adapter plate from Mercedes Diesel 4x4, the bronze pilot bushing that he supplies with the kit needs to be recessed 5/16 of an inch. Well, we had to pull ours out to get this and my flywheel balanced at the machine shop, and there were no instructions saying that you had to install this 5/16 recess. So we just installed it flush like you would with any other pilot bearing, pilot bushing in a normal application. And what it ended up doing was actually impacting the taper on the input shaft. So my input shaft and my crank could not spin at different speeds. If you're mechanically inclined or know how this stuff works, what that means is when I pushed the clutch in, I had horrendous noise as the bearing was just squealing up against the input shaft. And then on top of it, I couldn't shift through my gears properly, so I was putting a lot of strain on my transmission. Tore that trans out, saw that problem, reinstalled the kit. All's well, right? Same thing happened about 2,000 miles later, which I drive 3,000 miles a month, pretty much. So literally every month for the last 6 months, I have at some point pulled this transmission out, and honestly, it pisses me off. So multiple times I pulled this transmission out to fix this pilot bushing, just to keep myself running. I checked things, I thought I was checking things off the list, but I kept grenading the pilot bushings, and I was ruining my throwout bearings left and right. So I started measuring when I had the trans out one of the last times, and I realized this thing has to be recessed 5/16 of an inch. And the reason why is this kit actually pushes the flywheel into the bell housing 5/16 of an inch. So a little bit of straight edge and caliper measuring gave me that data that I needed to figure that out. After thinking about it then, I realized, well, now I'm putting a ton of extra pressure on my throwout bearing. And I don't honestly know a good way to remedy that. I have multiple people that I know that are friends of mine that have this kit, have the same application, and they keep going through throwout bearings. They're groaning like crazy because you're constantly driving pressure on the fingers of the clutch. And that throwout bearing is not meant to be under heavy pressure constantly. I believe, from my knowledge of the slave cylinder and how it works in the AX15, there is always going to be outward pressure from the slave, so it might be lightly dragging on the fingers. But when you push this thing 5/16 of an inch further into the bell housing, you are putting a tremendous amount of pressure on that throwout bearing. So after quote-unquote fixing those issues multiple times, I finally ended up just taking the Jeep on a family trip. I packed myself, my wife, my 3 toddlers, and we headed to Tennessee. And that's about 1,000 miles one way for me, from where I'm at. And the way down, the trip went pretty good. I didn't have any clutch noises. I thought I was in the clear. Well, we were down there for 2 weeks. About 3 days into the trip, clutch starts making noise again, can't shift the transmission right. So I dropped my Jeep off at a local transmission shop because I had all my tools, but I didn't have a trans jack, I didn't have a place, I had no way to actually deal with this myself. So I ended up with a massive bill from this transmission shop, which it was a fair price, but at the same time it was unexpected. I'm paying hundreds of dollars to have this guy custom machine a new pilot bushing and then reinstall my kit. And while he was in my kit, he realized that Nathan's instructions say for the flywheel to use washers under the main bolts that hold the flywheel to the crank adapter. Because if you use the standard length bolts, they would actually bottom out on the crank adapter or on the crank itself, and you would never actually be able to fully tighten down the flywheel to the crank adapter. So instead of selling the kit with shorter bolts, we got washers. We followed the instructions. But what happens when you use those washers is it pushes the heads of the bolt actually into the clutch friction plate. The springs that are around that plate were dragging on the bolt heads. And the transmission shop in Tennessee figured out that that was what it was, and in his opinion, that was what was putting pressure on the input shaft, grenading my pilot bushings, and doing all kinds of wonky crap to my Jeep. Slapped it back together. He custom machined me a new oilite, however you say that, bronze oilite bearing, and we were on our way. And that's another little detail about this kit that really is irritating to me, is they take a 5/8 inch inner diameter bushing for some hot rod application or some Mercury application, and they actually turn it. This is from Mercedes Diesel 4x4. They turn the inside out to 3/4 of an inch. So what that means is if you're stranded along the side of the road and you get your Jeep towed to, or whatever application you have that uses this, you get it towed to a transmission shop because you're having issues, they're not going to be able to buy this bushing. It's not possible. It doesn't exist. Instead of using a bushing that actually exists in an aftermarket application setting that you can purchase online from someone like Rock Auto or Summit, this is a custom machine part. That to me should have been a red flag from the beginning, but I did not know that going into this kit. I do now, and I'm trying to educate you about this because these are details that matter so much. So after the transmission shop in Tennessee, I drove home and I've been having good luck. I drove it out to Ohio. I was actually out in Ohio twice in 1 month, put thousands of miles on it. And here we are at the 5,000 mile mark again, and my pilot bushing is making horrendous noise and my Jeep wouldn't shift properly. Again, I fully believe at this point that this adapter plate and this crank adapter are not concentric. I believe that it is so far out of spec that the input shaft is actually ovaling out, not really ovaling, but oversizing this pilot bushing, and it's dragging on it and it's doing crazy stuff because this kit is not putting things together the proper way. So that's like the short, super short rundown of what I've experienced, and I think that you probably could relate to my frustration. I am so worn out from this swap, and it should have been so much easier. I want to show you just one more thing about this kit that I really don't like, and another thing that should have stood out to me. This is the crank adapter that comes with the Mercedes Diesel 4x4 kit, and it fits into the back of the flywheel, and there's holes that are threaded for the factory flywheel bolts, but then the crank bolts you had to actually drill yourself. Now I'm going to try to hold up this flywheel, and this to me is a major issue. Just take a peek into the middle there. Notice how the holes actually protrude into the center of the flywheel. To me, that's a weak spot. Just looking at that, your bolts are not fully surrounded by material. To me, that is terrible. That is a dumb idea. And you know what? At the beginning, when we were putting this kit together, I didn't really think a whole lot about it. But now I'm looking back at it saying that's kind of sketchy that my flywheel is not fully supported by material around those holes that we had to drill. Not to mention we had to drill them ourselves. And we have some milling machines here, and we used one of the drill presses to do this. But how perfect are you really going to drill these holes in your flywheel? And honestly, I just don't have a whole lot of faith in that setup. On top of that, there's actually 12 bolts that go into the Mercedes stock flywheel. This kit uses only 6. So you're cutting your bolts in half. There's probably a reason why Mercedes-Benz decided to use 12 bolts. And I'm going to venture to say that there's nothing about this kit that adds strength or added value to the actual assembly of the motor itself to be able to justify getting rid of half of the bolts that hold the entire assembly onto the crank. That just seems crazy to me. So guys, I'm just telling you, I'm coming out here and saying, please, if you are going to buy this kit, just understand what you're getting into. You could dial indicate your trans for an AX15. That's not an easy process. Is it possible? Yes. I know people who have done it, and because they took the time to do that and their trans is perfectly aligned, they now have a perfectly functional Jeep with this kit. But even if your trans happens to be, let's say you get lucky and your transmission lines up perfectly. your flywheel is still pushed into your bell housing 5/16 of an inch. You're still going to be going through throwout bearings, and you still only have 6 of the 12 required bolts into the crank. Honestly guys, to me, this is an under-engineered kit, and I would stay away from it if you have a Jeep with an AX15. Now again, I'm not saying this stuff just to bash this company. These are true facts. These are things that I have experienced. I have no interest in slandering people for no reason and calling names, and I'm not trying to hurt his business, but I'm trying to protect you guys from buying a product that is not designed to fill the role that you need it to fill. So just keep that in mind. Again, the motor mounts and some of the other stuff I bought from him are perfect. They work great. So I know he's capable of making good parts. Maybe some of his other adapter kits are fine. I don't know. This is the only one that I've had experience with, and at this point, I cannot recommend it to you. Hopefully that fills you in a little bit on why I have not been putting out videos. Again, I did not want to spend hours and hours and hours and hours to edit these videos to then at the end come out and say, okay, that was cool, here's how you do it, but by the way, don't do it with this kit. I would rather present to you a better option, and I have one finally, and I actually have the first kit in existence from Doomsday Diesel, and I'm going to talk about it for a little bit. So let's go right over there. I'm going to show you some panning shots of this hardware and everything, and I think you're going to like this kit, and it's going to make a lot of sense for you. And it is definitely, it has been worth the wait. And had I known about this kit from the start, I would have never spent my money over here on the MD 4x4 kit. So let's talk about that kit. After I got the swap completed for the 4th or 5th time, I found a Facebook group called OM617 Swaps. And through that group, I learned of a company named Doomsday Diesel. And the dude that owns the company, Joe Peterson, legit dude, he obviously knows what he's doing. He has a background in engineering. He's very highly respected in the Toyota realm, swapping these OM617 motors into different platforms and different variations of Toyotas. So I started seeing him posting content, and I realized this dude knows what he's doing. He put up a post that he was going to have a beta testing program for his AX15 kit, and that it was about to come out. So immediately I shot him a message. I was like, dude, I need your kit. I'm just so tired of dealing with the crap from the Mercedes diesel 4x4 kit. So he agreed. I actually have literally the first kit in existence. I'm the first one that ever received the Doomsday Diesel kit, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to do that. Partially because my goals with my swap is literally a daily driver. I told you already, I drive thousands of miles a month. So I'm a perfect test subject to see if this kit works out great. So what I want to get out in the open right away is that this is not going to be a how-to video on the Doomsday Diesel kit. And there's a couple reasons why. At the time of shooting this video, this is a beta test kit. There may possibly be revisions to this kit. There could be differences in the pricing and the different options for this kit as well. So I don't want to tell you this is how you do it and then find out that we had to tweak some things and that there are some minor changes or even major changes, and then essentially waste a video on that process. I have no doubt that Joe's going to put out really good instructions, and he's going to point you guys in the right direction with videos and other content. I just want to go over some of the details of this kit, and you're going to see immediately why, in my mind, the value is already there with this kit. First of all, the most critical aspect, in my opinion, or at least the thing that I pay the most attention to, is the crank adapter. So this is a very cool piece of equipment here. what you'll see is there's 12 holes that are countersunk, and they are for these bolts that bolt directly through this adapter and then into the crank. Now, one of the coolest parts about this is he includes with this kit ARP hardware. This is serious stuff. These are high quality bolts. So I have no doubt that there's not going to be any flex or breaking or any premature wear on any of the bolts. So notice as the 12 bolt holes are recessed, and then there's this cover plate that slides over the top that then goes behind your flywheel, and your flywheel bolts through that to the 6 different threaded holes in the back, and this plate will effectively lock those bolts underneath. Like, there's no way that they're going to back out and break on you or anything crazy like that. One of the other details that is phenomenal about this kit is the fact that that is a standard Jeep Pilot bearing. With his kit, he's using a bearing. The Mercedes Diesel 4x4 kit used a bushing. I'm not against bushings at all, but I will say that this Pilot bearing is probably going to be a more refined setup than an old school bushing for this application. So these two pieces are very precision fit. When you're putting them together, I mean, it is so snug and so perfect. These are machined out of steel. I'm not sure of the type of steel. You would have to go message Doomsday and find out, but I have no doubt that he used high quality stuff in this application. Then the other major part that you're going to see is the actual plate that bolts to the block that the transmission will line up and index off of. Some of the details that I really like about this are the fact that he has countersunk holes, and he has these little Allen head bolts that'll go through the adapter and then into the block. That's just the details to me that matter, and they make a lot of sense when you're putting this thing together. This is a plasma cut outside plate, but the holes are drilled. It's very obvious that these are perfect holes. He probably has a jig or some sort of fixture to make sure that they are perfectly in the position that they need to be. So just looking at this right away, this is a 1/2 inch thick steel plate. The Mercedes Diesel 4x4 kit is 3/8 inch. This thing's not going to flex at all. There's no chance this is warped or anything crazy. The 3/8 inch plate, when it's bolted to the block, you could actually flex it by hand pretty easily. Not that it would bend or do anything crazy, but it just didn't seem that stout. So his kit comes with the adapter for the crank. It comes with the bell housing adapter to the block, and then it has his dust shield, which would go behind this plate and between the bell housing. And it has a covering section which is going to cover the excess hole around the starter, and then it's going to locate the starter for you perfectly. This is 1/8 inch steel. It looks just like mild steel, and this looks to be plasma cut with some of these holes being drilled. So not super complicated stuff, but it's obviously high quality. And with his kit, the one that I purchased, I opted to buy a brand new Luke flywheel, and this has all the holes required. I don't have to drill anything. I don't have to do anything crazy. This is ready to accept this adapter, so it's going to be a very straightforward installation, I believe. This is all I'm going to get done for tonight. I'm actually going to come back tomorrow evening, and I'm going to start installing this kit onto my Jeep and hopefully get the transmission in place. That might have to wait till this weekend. But either way, I may be splitting this video into 2 series, but I wanted to show you what comes with this kit. And if you're in the market for an OM617 to an AX15 conversion, I definitely would say to check out Joe with Doomsday Diesel, because even before I put this thing on, I can tell that this is a legitimate kit, and it's going to do way more than what the other kit was going to do for me. Joe also includes all the other regular bolts that you would need for the bell housing, and I'll let you guys know in a second video how all of this installation goes. Like I said, I'm not going to do a how-to because things may change between now and the production of this kit, but just know that I believe that Joe is making a good product. I paid for this kit with my own money, so he didn't pay me to do this and say this. In fact, he never even mentioned making a YouTube video about it. I'm a big proponent of putting the spotlight on companies that are doing business really well, and that's why I'm taking the time to make this video. And I know it's mostly just talking, but it's important stuff. Just make sure if you're doing a swap, you get the right components so you don't have all this time and money wasted, because at this point, I've literally spent thousands trying to make this Mercedes Diesel 4x4 kit work, and I have not been successful in that at all. So guys, hopefully this helps you out. Hopefully it gave you some more information. If you want to see more about my swap, or if you have questions about it, please leave them down in the comments below. If you have topics you want me to cover on the OM617 conversion, please again, leave them in the comments below. Make sure you're thumbing up this video, hit that subscribe button, and stay tuned for future videos on my diesel conversion in my 99 Jeep Cherokee. Thanks again guys, and stay well, stay safe. I'll see you guys in the next video.